Hey everyone, BraveFan092 with a Pokemon Black and White RNG abuse video. The method we are going to do here is standard abuse for Legends and Wild Pokemon, which is formerly known as non-CG abuse for anyone using Japanese ROMs, or Japanese cartridges. This method of RNG abuse will probably become your preferred vehicle for obtaining flawless Pokemon, as there's no such thing as delay. You only have to hit a time down to roughly a second. In addition, with standard abuse, it is now possible to manipulate for nature, ability, gender, and even shininess with some patience. We'll be going for a Jolly Flawless Terrakion. Let's go over what we can have and what we can't have. First of all, we need a way of checking IVs. You have to do this the hard way, which means no action replay, unfortunately for me. If you have a lot of rare candies, now's the time to use them. Second, you need a version of RNG Reporter that supports English retail cartridges. Third, have a sweet center and a place to catch wild Pokemon where there are no NPCs. I prefer the last cave of Victory Road. Next, have the full MAC address of your DS, with no hyphens of course. Optionally, you can have it shade out in your property as long as you have a custom voice recording made for it, but this is only useful if you want direct control over ability, nature, and so on, and is not necessary. Lastly, you might want a synchronizer, but that can be sidestepped with proper nature manipulation. Now to go over what we can't have. At the time of recording, you may not use an action replay. You also can't use a flashcard or an emulator. Now for the one that will annoy a lot of people. Those of you with DSIs are out in the cold, or 3DSs for that matter. If you have a DS original like me, or a DS Lite, now's the time to use it. Be aware that these conditions may change as more research is done, especially with the DSIs. So always check back for the latest RNG reporter and any news associated with it. First, we need the parameters for your game and DS combination. You only need to do this once per combination. Open up RNG Reporter and go into the Time Finder. Under the Capture tab, click on DS Parameters. A new window will open. On the right, select the combination of DS and game that fits your situation. For me, that's a DS Original with an English Pokemon Black. Now punch in your full MAC address. Mark the held button field as none. I'll walk you through the rest of this in person. Okay, so we need to set the time and date for the parameter searcher. This will be the time we hard load the DS from the menu. By the way, all resets you do all hard loads you do from the menu must be from the DS's main menu for standard abuse. So if you have auto boot loaded on your DS, you might want to change that setting. The time and date won't matter for just finding your parameters for the most part. But for the seconds, try to stay within 20 to 40 seconds just so we don't have any issues, although really you're not going to have any real problems. So in this example, I picked April 2nd at the time 6:13:25. So I'm going to set my DS to this time too. Oh, by the way, say hello to Jigglypuff. And so now it's synced up with the parameter finder. Now we're going to start the DS clock and reboot the DS. And what's really convenient is that the DS has a on-screen clock, which is, as far as your game's concerned, this is the clock it's using. So when this hits 25, we want to hit A. So I'm going to do that. 24. Okay, so the game's loading. Now, as it's loading this initial white screen, I must stress that you don't press any buttons, because if you press buttons, it changes the non-C gear seed, which is actually pretty useful later on once we actually have this thing calibrated. So now I advise that you go to a quiet place like Victory Road, which I should be saved in. And yeah, winter, so what? Yeah. Okay, so without spending too much time, you want to use your sweet center to attract a Pokemon. So I'm going to do that, and what you want to do now is get it to the point where you can check IVs down to a range, and RNG Reporter supports ranges, so you can just plug them in and it'll search all the possible combinations until it finds what you want. Although if you can get it down to an exact single digit as far as IVs, perfect knowledge, it makes your life a lot easier. So I'm gonna go capture Kevin the Durant here, and check his IVs, and I'll get back to you when I do that. Okay, using a combination of my level 100 stats and Pokemon Online, I've determined most of my IVs down exactly. So the HP is 29, the attack is 6, the defense is also 29. Now, special attack was a little bit weird, so I've got a range of 19 to 20, even at level 100, just goes to show you stupid things can happen. Special defense, it was 15, and speed was 18. And I've got my time inputted, RNG reporter's done the rest, I've selected my versions. Oh, my MAC address is missing. Excuse me, I'll go fill that in. Okay, back, I filled in my MAC address. And I stressed that you didn't hold any buttons as you started the game, so that should do it. I shall hit search now. Good. So we found a result. Actual seconds is 26. And the V count is 60, timer 0 C7C, GX stat is 6, V frame is 8, and net seed is ginormous. Most of this probably doesn't make any sense to you, but what you probably should pay attention to is the fact that the actual second says 26. I pressed A at 25. This means that the RNG seeded 1 second after I pressed A. So this means that if I had a future target, say like 7:17:47, I would hit A at 7:17:46 because the differential is 1. So you might want to make a note of that somewhere. V count's pretty stable. Timer 0 might give you a few headaches. This value is generally pretty consistent, but it'll generally fluctuate by like 1. Although you'll find that certain values more common. So you want to repeat this whole parameter finding process several times until you find a value that's most common. And the other stuff should stay fairly consistent except the seed, but it's irrelevant for this process. So let's go back to the time finder. Well, after we do this a few times, we'll go back to the time finder. Okay, so my timer 0 value turned out to be C7C, and my differential was +1. So I find out that the RNG is seeding a second after I load the game. This means you have to load a second before the displayed time for any seed you find later. When we hit close window, RNG reporter will fill in the fields in the time finder for us. Now we fill in IV criteria. We're doing a flawless Jolly Terrakion, so everything should be a 31 except for the meaningless special attack. I've set the IVs in here. Now we must set the frame. Ideally, the lower the frame, the better. Frame 1 is best, so that would mean that we wouldn't have to do any advancements. But I'd go no higher than 6, so I don't have to walk more than 128 steps to advance the frame by how many Pokemon I have in my party. Okay, we now have some usable results. Since in our frame 1 all require advancement, I'll take the one with frame 5. We have to walk 128 steps with 4 Pokemon in our party. The seed also has a time of 4, 31, 18. Since we found out our differential was +1, we had to load at 4, 31, 17. RNG Reporter also says we have to hold no button as the game loads. Always pay attention to that column, as it will tell you if you need to hold down a button as the game initially loads to the Nintendo logo. If we do that, we should get the IVs we want, but the nature is a longer process. Let's confirm the IVs in-game. Okay, so I've got my DS set to the target time of the seed, which is 4/31/18 on April 4th, 2011. And I need to load the game at the 18th second, which means I need to press A at the 17th second because we had a +1 second differential as we'd found out from our parameter search. So, let's begin. And I'm not allowed to hold any buttons as the game loads to the Nintendo screen. The Nintendo logo, more like. "14, 15, 16, 17. See, now, if I were to hold it, if RNG Reporter told me to hold the button, I would hold the button up until that Nintendo screen. Naturally, do not start at the C here. Okay, now I need to walk 128 steps with 4 Pokemon to advance the frame to 5, so I'll do that off screen. Okay, now let's check what we got. Okay, So we can check its stats. Since we know what the target should be, it should have an HP of 141. And what do you know? It does. And see, to me that looks like the stats that should have. Let me check against Pokemon Online. Yes, those are the stats, roughly. So it looks like we hit our target. That's a 31, 31, 31, 24, 31, 31 Terrakion. So perfect IVs, right? False Terrakion, not so much. Lax, one of the worst natures you can possibly have. Now we need to show you how to abuse for natures, and this is where it gets a little bit hard. For those of you that might get a little bit intimidated by the upcoming process, what you can do is get a synchronizer. From there, you can do the RNG abuse like I've done just now. If it fails, you reset, you redo the process, and you save once, and then do it again. You should get a different nature. If that fails, reset, do it again, save twice, and keep adding one save until you get the result you want. But guess and check's kind of a crappy method, so we're gonna try to actively manipulate this.